We have not. If you look back over the arc of our deployment history over the last few years, we haven't had a lot of American combat power in our own neighborhood. I think that's, I suspect that's probably going to change. We'll see what we're ordered to do.
Well, as you just heard from Dan Kane, who happens to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, well, he's suggesting military combat in our own neighborhoods, which I would just venture to say is not something that most Americans would want to co-sign onto. But Cenk, what are your 2 cents?
Yeah, so I think that this story is deeply problematic. One of the most important stories. Will they be able to succeed on this program? So they are going to try to do a lockdown on politically incorrect thoughts, things that are described as anti-American, anti-Christian. Apparently, that's not allowed anymore. Anti-capitalist, that's not allowed anymore. So Anna's going to give you the full list, but they're coming for us. And by us, I don't mean just the left. I mean really anyone who the government thinks is having an unacceptable thought. So if you thought the government shouldn't tread on you, boy, you're going to want to pay attention to this story.
Exactly. So look, that clip really bolsters what the heart of this segment is about, because friend of the show, Ken Klippenstein, uncovered some interesting documents from the Justice Department that indicate that they are basically planning to compile a list of Americans who the federal government deems to be extremist. Okay, so again, this is from Ken Klippenstein's reporting. He says, per the DOJ memo obtained exclusively by Klippenstein, Attorney General Pam Bondi is ordering the FBI to compile a list of groups or entities engaging in acts that may constitute domestic terrorism. Now, already we're running into a huge issue here because, as we know, the Trump administration is ready and willing to call anything and everything terrorism. We're seeing that play out in the Caribbean right now as we speak when it comes to fishing boats. And the allegation is the fishing boats contain narco terrorists, and no evidence, of course, has been provided for that. Besides which, even if we're talking about proven drug smugglers or traffickers, US policy is not to just execute them extrajudiciously. But nonetheless, the target, according to Klippenstein's reporting, is those expressing opposition to law and immigration enforcement, extreme views in favor of mass migration and open borders, adherence to radical gender ideology, as well as anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, and anti-Christianity. So let me get this straight. Simply disagreeing with someone who believes in gender ideology, not good enough. Now they need to be labeled as extremists, as terrorists, as people that need to be put on some sort of DOJ list. That's insane. That's insane. That's absolutely crazy. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, this is as un-American as it gets because it goes to the core issue of freedom of speech, and it says you shouldn't have any. If you have speech that we don't agree with, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And as always, guys, this isn't just about the right's getting to do it to the left. If the left gets in, bad guys on the left. If I don't know that anyone on the left that I know of would ever do this. But for the folks on the right, they think, oh, the left is filled with guys who can't wait to take advantage of stuff like this and tread on them, right? Okay, well, what happens when the next time someone from the left or a Democrat gets in the power and they go, well, you said radical gender ideology. I think your gender ideology is radical. Not acknowledging trans people or calling them mental disease, et cetera, is radical. So now you're in a world of trouble and we're gonna tread on you. Anti-American, well, I mean, there's a lot of ways to think about American principles. Anti-capitalism, well, okay, now if you're not in favor of what? Corporatism or crony capitalism, et cetera, we're gonna count that and we're gonna come after you if you're on the left or the right. No, this is insanity. In America, one of the pillars of our government and our constitution is the freedom of speech and really freedom of thought, that we're allowed to think whatever we want. So to me, you're radical on gender ideology on either side, I don't care, so what? Air it out. I have debates with Hassan every year. He's my nephew, Hassan Piker, and he argues for a lot more strident socialism. I argue for capitalism, but democratic capitalism. That's a great debate. Well, should we shut that debate down and arrest one of us for having the wrong opinions? Like, that doesn't make any sense at all. I don't care if you consider yourself the most capitalist or the least capitalist person. You're allowed to think any of those things in America. So look, Anna, I think the biggest question of all is, how is the country going to react to this? Because if they let them do this, then we're kind of doomed. And that's not hyperbole. This is coming after core freedoms, right? So
yeah, I mean, look, you're right about that. I don't think it matters how the country reacts to it, because the people of this country have been ignored on pretty much every issue they care about, with the exception of the Epstein files, which, luckily got the support of a bipartisan group of politicians who wouldn't let up on that issue. But if it weren't for them, if we didn't have any allies in Congress, the public is unorganized. And what I mean by that is, when you're unorganized, you're ineffective in pushing for the kind of change that we need in this country, including preventive measures to ensure that you don't have the FBI, and it would be the FBI that would put this list together. You don't have the FBI putting a list of people they don't like together to refer to them as domestic terrorists. But okay, so how would the FBI locate individuals with these beliefs? Like, how do they, first of all, determine that someone falls under their categories of terrorism? And how do they identify and find those people? What indicators are they looking for? Well, according to Klippenstein, Attorney General Pam Bondi wants the FBI to more publicly promote its tip line, which, okay, so you're hoping that other Americans can, I guess, tell on each other, rat on each other as potential terrorists, potential extremists. And she also wants to create a cash reward system for information that could get the leaders of these purported domestic terrorist organizations arrested. Now, it does go a little bit deeper, because the memo later instructs the FBI to establish cooperators to provide information and eventually testify against other members of the group. And the FBI won't just focus on new cases. In fact, the memo also directs the FBI and FBI Joint Terrorism Task Forces to retroactively investigate incidents going back 5 years, authorizing JTTFs in particular to use everything at their based on the American people. Based on, by the way, define what terrorist means for the Trump administration. I mean, it's very vague, and I think it's intentionally vague.
Yeah, and of course it'll be selectively enforced. So when the Trump people are in charge, the first people they're going to come after is anyone voicing criticism of Israel. Of course, that's always the number one priority. And then they could move on to people criticizing Trump. I can't believe something comes in at above criticizing Trump as things that this administration is concerned about. But yeah, that'll come in second. So they'll try to declare Jimmy Kimmel a domestic terrorist who's anti something or other, or whatever that they ludicrous lunatic thing that they do. But Anna, overall, I hope to God that I'm not overly optimistic here, but I don't think this one's gonna stick. I think that again, they're gonna lose the middle on this in a big way. When they go to the independent podcasters that sway a lot of those younger voters, I don't see those guys going, oh yeah, let's just do a new reign of terror against freedom of speech. That's what we signed up for. And we're all now noticing all the grotesque hypocrisies of the government, right? So on the one hand, Trump says, oh, we're going to get going after Venezuela because of drugs. And then he lets go one of the biggest drug dealers in human history. The other day, the former president of Honduras pardons him. It's insanity, 45-year sentence. On this one, you're like Israel killing 20,000 children, not terrorism. Sheldon Adelson flying out Jonathan Pollard, one of the biggest traitors in American history, on his luxury private jet, not betraying America. But if you speak out against Trump or Netanyahu, all of a sudden you'll be a domestic terrorist who's a traitor and speaking out against America. So this is as treading on you as it gets. If you had one of those flags, this is time to bring it out.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.